All right. How's everybody doing tonight? I'm live from my new location, moving out of my house. I'm in the middle of moving out of my old house that I've been in for about 6 years, getting over to some family land. Gonna build a house here pretty soon. So excuse my mess. I have all my frames and memorabilia and stuff like that behind me. So this is just going to be probably my area for my YouTube stuff over the course of the next year or so. So, going to get settled in here, and we can talk some Mississippi State sports over the next year or so in here. Going to let some people come in here. We'll chat tonight as long as you guys want to. We'll talk some Mississippi State sports. We'll talk about whatever you guys want to. I really wanted to kind of touch on baseball as the season has begun for Mississippi State. They've got started on the diamond for the Bulldogs and getting set for another weekend series at Duty Noble coming up tomorrow as Mississippi State hosts Northern Kentucky. Also, women's basketball coming off of a loss tonight against Tennessee on the road. Men's basketball lost as well on the road to South Carolina. Probably ends their chances of making the NCAA tournament unless they make a big run in the SEC tournament. So we'll talk a lot about that stuff. And if you guys want to talk about anything else, feel free to drop your comments in the chat over there on the right side. You can ask me questions. You can conversate. You can do whatever you want to. Just drop your stuff over there in the side in the chat, and we will discuss it. So let's start, I guess, with baseball. Mississippi State hosting Northern Kentucky, a game in a series, quite frankly, that Mississippi State should win and win pretty comfortably. Baseball is baseball. Anything can happen. But as far as the matchup is concerned, Mississippi State should be heavily favored in this series. And if you're expecting to do big things this year, you need to come out and take care of business in those 3 games against Northern Kentucky. So they'll host games on Friday at 3, Saturday at 2, Sunday at 1. Pretty easy to remember, 3, 2, 1. And I think you got a game on Saturday for the men in basketball going on. You got the women playing on Sunday. So a lot of things happening on campus for Mississippi State. And baseball might be the most heavily populated, I would guess. Last week, just an incredible amount of people for an opening series, the most I've ever seen, and it is the most they've ever had in an opening weekend. Over 30,000 fans in 3 ball games is an average of over 10,000 fans a game, and that was a legit number. I think Mississippi State was not fibbing their numbers there. That was a monster crowd on Saturday. Friday was a pretty big crowd as well. Saturday was a huge crowd, and was really impressed with that. I mean, once you win a national championship, things get taken to another level. Mississippi State fans have always been really good about attending baseball games, but I think now things have really gone over the top. I mean, they sold over 13,000 season tickets. It's just crazy, the support that this program is getting at this point, and it's only up from here, I think, for Mississippi State as far as baseball is concerned. What's up, Jay? Good to meet you the other day, by the way. Met Jay at Two Brothers. That is the spot, by the way. If you're in town this weekend, go to Two Brothers. There's literally nothing on the menu that I would not suggest. I mean, I've tried just about everything, and there's nothing that I would say, you know what, I don't really like that. I would eat anything. I'm not even a pimento and cheese fan. They have those fried pimento and cheese fritters that are just absolutely incredible, and I'm not a pimento and cheese fan. Every time I'm around my grandmother, she's offering me a pimento and cheese sandwich, and I feel so rude telling her I don't want it, but I just don't like it. I'll eat the fried pimento and cheese. Anything that's fried, I'm probably going to eat. So go check out Two Brothers if you're there this weekend. They're sponsor, of course, of our podcast, but I would suggest it to anybody, even if they weren't paying us on our podcast for it. It's just unbelievable. So anyway, great to meet you there, Jay. Jay drove all the way down, I believe, from Baltimore to check that out and to check out baseball last weekend. Jay, there were a lot of former Bulldog greats in attendance last weekend. Of all the past baseball players, which one seems to create the most buzz from fans when they come home? That's a good question. I think it's still probably going to be Rafael Palmeiro or Will Clark. It's crazy. I mean, even after all these years, and I would say a large portion of the fan base that is at games never saw those guys play. I wasn't alive when those guys were playing at Mississippi State. But I think it's just the fact, the Thunder and Lightning documentary that came out, the fact that they were so big in the MLB, those guys still carry around them an aura that a lot of the other guys don't. I mean, Hunter Renfroe just walks around like a regular guy. He's just a regular old country boy from Mississippi that, just kind of blends in with everybody else. And I don't think that he creates the same kind of buzz as those guys do. They just have something about them that is a different kind of energy. Those are the guys that I would say really kind of stand out. And Jeff Brantley, of course, was on that same team. He's probably another one that's the same way. And also Ryan Polk. I mean, he still is the legend of legends at Mississippi State. And, just seeing him walk through the press box, just hanging out and getting a box of Chick-fil-A or something, it's still surreal to me that it's happening. So, yeah, and when you really think about it, Mississippi State's been blessed to have some absolute legends of college baseball and of baseball in general come through here. And you see them around all the time. It's really amazing that kind of the fraternity that has been created in Mississippi State baseball. And I'll add Jonathan Papelbon to the list too. I'll come back to you, Owen, whenever we get into basketball. Elijah, already we've seen the transition to Landon Sims, a starter from closer. How do you feel about Preston Johnson starting? That's an interesting move from Scott Foxhall and Chris Lemonis. I don't have a problem with it. That he's actually a guy that I thought could start from the very beginning, but I just didn't know how comfortable they would be moving a guy that's been so reliable in the bullpen out of the bullpen when you haven't had a whole lot of guys step up there. I don't know who's going to step up out of the bullpen and really help Mississippi State down the stretch, because right now there's not a whole lot of guys that I feel comfortable throwing out there if I'm Scott Foxhall. And it's not that you expect them to do bad. It's just that you haven't seen anything from them that makes you feel real good right now. Preston Johnson was probably the best guy of the bullpen this past weekend. And he walked 4 guys, which was really unusual for him in 4 innings, but he struck out 9. I mean, I think he loaded the bases up one of those innings with walks, and then he got out of strikeouts. Nobody was ever really putting a major threat on him to score. And you feel really good when Preston Johnson's going to the mound, and he's a guy that can really stretch out a game. I fully believe he's going to be a really good starter for Mississippi State. I could see this rotation sticking because you're going to get good starts from Landon Sims. You're very rarely going to see him fall apart, I would imagine. Cade Smith, if you get what you got from him, anything remotely close to it in that first game against Long Beach, you're going to feel really good about your Sunday starter. And that's usually a day where you piece things together. But if you get what you got from him, you might not have to. And then Preston Johnson has shown he can kind of stretch out games. He can pitch 4, 5, 6 innings. And he rarely gets touched up. If you can get those guys to throw 5, 6 innings consistently every weekend, 6, 7 innings, and you're not having to put a lot of the bullpen guys out there, then it's a big difference from what you saw last year when the strength of Mississippi State, I thought, was really in the bullpen. It was very similar to that 2013 season, and that the bullpen, if you could get it to Landon Sims, if you could get it to Preston Johnson and guys like that, you felt like you were going to close the game down. Now, Will Bednar was pretty good all year. He was incredible in the postseason, and especially the College World Series. But really, you didn't have a ton of consistency from Christian McLeod. You didn't have a ton of consistency on Sunday. Will Bednar was pretty good most weeks, but none of those guys were consistently, shut down guys. Bednar was probably one of their best. So if you can turn it around this year and have strong starts every single weekend in all 3 games from your starters, you don't have to put as much pressure on those guys in the bullpen. So I think that's kind of what they're they're looking at here. But we did see some good things from some guys too last weekend. Was really impressed with Pico Cone, who threw 2 innings, struck out 3 guys, gave up a hit, really commanded the strike zone, I thought, well. Brooks Auger is a guy that could be sneaky good, 2 strikeouts in an inning pitched coming out of the bullpen the other day. I thought Mikey Tepper was okay. He gave up a couple of hits, so the strikeout. Stone Simmons was really good. He came in there and struck out all 3 guys. That's a guy that's my pick to be the closer for Mississippi State. We'll see what they choose to do this weekend, but I think he has a chance to be their best guy in the back end of the bullpen. Brandon Smith, you need him to get it together. You need Parker Stinnett to get it together. You need Cam Tuller to get it together, and Andrew Walling. All those guys really struggled at times the other day. You need those guys to step up out of the bullpen and make something happen. Jay, do we expect to see Tanner Leggett get a start this weekend? We'll see on that. I'm interested to see what they do with him. I mean, right now he's leading the team batting average. I know he's only had 6 at bats, but 3 out of 6. He leads the team in RBI. He has a couple of home runs. I mean, it's just he's really going to push for that shortstop position at least, especially if Lane Forsythe is not able to hit for average. If he's going up there and he's batting, 230, 240, whatever, and Tanner Leggett's, when he's getting his opportunities, batting, 320 or something like that, it's going to be tough to keep him off the field because I just don't think the defense is going to be that much better from Lane Forsythe. I think Tanner Leggett's perfectly capable of playing either of the middle infield positions. And I think he's going to see some more time this weekend too. Appreciate that, Mason. I enjoy doing it. I've never thought about doing Patreon. I just got started doing YouTube a few months ago. I've tried to get it off the ground. I'm trying to get up to 1,000 subscribers. So if you guys aren't subscribing to this YouTube channel, I encourage you to go do so. I got a ton of content that I put out. All the press conferences that I'm at, they go on my YouTube channel, so you can watch back press conferences. And then we have at least once a week, I usually do a video of some kind. If it's not a live chat, I try to do just a reaction to a game or kind of a state of the state thing. And that comes out, at least once a week. I'll probably have something after the series this weekend, kind of recapping the weekend as well. So, yeah. We'll just throw it around here. We'll talk a little basketball too. Oh, and do you see this being the end of the Howland era? It's feeling like there's a light at the end of the tunnel here for Mississippi State. I don't see a way out of this for Ben Howland. I hate it for Ben Howland, who's such an incredibly nice person, and I think a very good coach too. A coach that has accomplished so many things in his career, and you have to give him a lot of credit for getting Mississippi State back on track when they had really fallen in a hole under Rick Ray. I mean, they were at the bottom of the ocean in the SEC, and he got them to become much more respectable. He got them to the point where you guys were upset about mediocrity, and I think that's a credit to him for getting Mississippi State back to the point where your expectations have gotten higher. I think under Rick Ray, everybody had just kind of given up. And I think with Ben Howland, he was recruiting well enough that people believed that this team should be better than it is. And that's completely true. They should be better than they are. But they're not coming through. They're not getting big wins, and they're not getting to the postseason that matters, and that's the NCAA tournament. He's going to the NIT. Nobody wants the NIT anymore. That was a goal that State fans longed for whenever Rick Ray was here and they were having losing seasons. Now the goal is to get back to the NCAA tournament, and this program is not doing it right now. So I just don't see a way out for Ben Howland. I think we're going to have a coaching search here. I think it's already starting. To be quite honest with you, I think there's already been some feelers put out. I expect Mississippi State to have a new head coach coaching next season. I don't see any other way. back for Ben Howland, and I wish him nothing but the best. But right now, I don't see that as a possibility unless Mississippi State comes back and wins the national title or something, which is not going to happen. They're not going to make the NCAA tournament. And on the flip side of that is women's basketball. And Alan had a question. Do you think Cohen's putting more attention on finding a men's basketball or a women's basketball coach? And any chance either coach from basketball is retained? I don't. I think right now is a little bit of both. I don't really know about how much he is putting into men's basketball right now. I don't know. I don't know anything for certain on that, but I do know that he is searching for the women's coach right now, and I believe that he's had some interviews. I put up a hot board of candidates that I believe Mississippi State is not only interested in, but very interested in, and that some of them are interested in Mississippi State as well. Most of the names that I listed, I believe, are heavily tied to the Mississippi State job. And there's a couple of people that I listed that I think just could be dark horses or someone that Mississippi State could or should look at. So some good names on there. Doug Novak is on that list, by the way. And I have reason to believe that he is very much a candidate for this job. I don't believe that he has been canceled out or is not going to be considered. I think that John Cohen is going to give him a good hard look, and I believe he's inquired about Doug Novak from outside sources, just trying to gauge interest in Novak's past and if he'd be able to kind of handle this. I think John Cohen is just going to cover all of his bases. He's going to try to get the best possible hire that he can for the women's job, and I think he'll do the same thing for the men as well. And any chance either coach will get retained, I don't expect Ben Howland back, but Doug Novak does have a chance. And on Thursday, you continue to see. I mean, this team is just they've run out of gas and they just have no size. I mean, Tennessee just absolutely dominated them, and State has lost now, I think, 4 straight games. Was really on a roll there for a little bit, but they just don't have the bodies. They don't have the roster to compete. They're missing a Jessica Carter. They're missing a Danae Carter. Those are players that would take Mississippi State from 15 wins right now to about 20 wins, in my opinion, and they would be in contention in the middle to the top of the league. I really believe that. I think Jessica Carter is the difference in Mississippi State being 15-12 and 20 and whatever right now. I think that was a tremendous loss for them. So State has one more. The women have one more game coming up on Sunday against Arkansas. That's a team that beat Mississippi State at Arkansas pretty handily, of 74-54. Before tonight, whenever Tennessee won big, that was the last game that Mississippi State really just kind of got blown out. And if you remember correctly, that was the game that was kind of the final straw for Rakia Jackson, and Mississippi State parted ways with her the very next day. They come back and they win 2 big games against Missouri and Texas A&M. They kind of go on a roll there. They've been a completely different team since that ball game. So I'm interested to see if Mississippi State can find a win on senior day for that and get some positive momentum going in the SEC tournament. Win that game, win a couple in the SEC tournament, and I think you're probably in the NCAAs, and that's a pretty big deal. If Mississippi State can get to possibly 17 wins here, maybe even 18. I think 18 definitely gets them in. 17 could. Because they were still in the NCAA tournament this past week, but I think the resume now is starting to drop a little bit. It's hard for me to imagine them getting in at 15-14 or 16-13 or whatever. I think it's going to take a couple more wins for them, honestly. And for the men, I mean, they're done. There's no way, unless they win the SEC tournament, for them to get in. The South Carolina game, I think, was the final straw. They came out and just kind of laid an egg. On Wednesday, South Carolina dominated on the defensive end and only allowed 56 points. So it was kind of at that point where State was going to have to win out in the regular season and win their final 4 games, and that was going to be really tough to do against Auburn and on the road at A&M. Now, if you win all 3 of those games, your resume gets slightly better. I mean, you're sitting there at 19-12. I mean, that's pretty good. 19-12, you'd be 10-8 in the SEC. You start to jump, I think, back into the conversation a little bit, but I still think they're going to have to make a major run in the SEC tournament to get in. Lil Perfect, do you have any updates on Rakia Jackson? I don't know what she's going to do. I think Ole Miss is looking at her. Last I heard is I think Texas is not going to take a chance on her. I think they're moving away from that. So I don't know what she's going to do. The women just play so hard. They're just too undersized. I agree. I mean, I don't think it's a lack of effort at all. I just think that the team just doesn't have the energy right now, and they don't have the size. I mean, Tamari Key from Tennessee just absolutely dominated in the post tonight, and there was just nobody there to stop that. I mean, Charlotte Cole's trying really hard, but she can't stop that, and there's nobody else with size. That's a big issue. But this roster can look a lot different next year, especially with Jessica Carter back. And that's what's really intriguing. I mean, if they return the bulk of this roster next year, they bring back Jessica Carter. They've added Eliza Winston from Michigan State. You get a lot of people back that didn't play this year. It's just, and you add in some other pieces, there's a chance this team can be really, really good next year. So I'm really interested to see how that all plays out. Jason, was Rakia that much of a locker room problem? I'm not going to put all the blame on Rakia. I just think that there was kind of a clash with Rakia and multiple players, and I just think that it was just not a good situation for the team. They were not in a good place there after the Arkansas game, and hadn't been in a good place on numerous occasions. And I'm not going to blame everything on Rakia because I don't believe that it was all her fault or anything. I think that it got to the point where she had gotten so frustrated and everybody else was so frustrated. I think that everybody just had to move in a different direction. And she's a great player. She did a lot for Mississippi State in her time in Starkville, and she's going to do really well wherever she goes. But it just was not going to work at Mississippi State moving forward for her. And I think they had some issues last year as well. Jay, Matt Quarters listed as a junior, but eligibility says sophomore. Which class will be last to be granted a COVID year of eligibility? Everybody that played during that time in 2020 gets a year. So that after that, it resets. So if you played in 2020 in junior college or college, you get that year back if you want to use it. And man, I'm gonna be ready when that runs out, because right now it's an absolute mess as far as eligibility is concerned. There's a lot of guys that teams cannot keep for one more year that they got to get rid of, that don't have a place to go, that has to transfer. I mean, it's made the transfer portal even messier than it already was. It's an absolute mess right now. And numbers are going to continue to be a mess because the NCAA is slowly trying to get back to those roster numbers that they had set before the pandemic. Elijah, with the absence of Rowdy and TA, who do you think will be the next dynamic duo for MSU baseball? Well, you hope it's this year, Cam James and Logan Tanner or something like that. In the future, I think it can be a couple of freshmen this year that we've talked about a little bit, Hunter Heinz and Slade Alford. Those two guys are like Bash brothers. I think eventually when they get in a lineup, they're going to be really tough to get through. And Hunter Heinz, I've been extremely impressed with his plate awareness and his ability to look at something with spin early in a count and spin on it if he needs to. He can take a fastball outside. He's not getting up there just hacking away. He's looking for his pitch. If he gets it, he'll barrel it up. If not, then he'll spit on it. And that's an impressive job by a true freshman to do that in the first weekend against some really, really good pitchers at Long Beach State, to do that and have that kind of success that he did. I think that speaks volumes. And for Chris Lemonis to have him in the lineup opening day as a DH says a lot, because there are a lot of players that could have taken that spot on opening day. Tanner Leggett's a senior. Drew McGowan has had a good bit of at bats. He could have got in there. Davis Mesh has been here for a couple of years. There's a lot of guys, Matt Corder, a lot of guys that could have taken that over the freshman, and he was clearly the guy that Lemonis wanted in the lineup. So he's impressed a whole lot of people, and I expect him to be in the starting lineup most of the season. And I think you'll see him a lot at first base too. He's a very good defensive first baseman. He's got a chance to be really good, and I'm waiting to see Slade Alford really break through. Might not be this year, but I think he's going to eventually. Some of the freshmen in this class remind me of that group that came in: Justin Foscue, Tanner Allen, Rowdy, Jordan Westberg. That crew that came in, Josh Hatcher. That's what some of these guys remind me of. And if you get another group like that to lead you to Omaha in 3 straight years and help you to a national title, you're in good shape. But you're going to see a lot more Hunter Heinz's and Slade Alfords coming up through the ranks for Mississippi State over the next few years, because Lemonis and Jake Gautreaux have recruited a different kind of looking player at Mississippi State in these next few classes. And there's going to be a lot of pop and a lot of big-time hitters coming through campus over the next few years. They've done a great job. I think you're going to start seeing that really fall into place for Mississippi State. Who's your top 6 to get the women's basketball head coaching position? I don't know about the top 6, but I think one of the top guys that you have to look at is Florida Gulf Coast coach Carl Smesko. I mean, he's been there for 20 years. He's won as much as anybody in the country consistently. I think he has 5 or 6 30-win seasons. He's winning 20-plus games every year. He's winning the conference every year, and that's a different level now. That's not the SEC, but he's got a top 25 team at Florida Gulf Coast. They're playing really well this year. They're an exciting offense. He's a guy that does not want to leave that school, but you can entice him if you're willing to spend some money. And I think Mississippi State will need to spend some money to get a coach like that. If you don't get Carl Smesko, it's my opinion that you should just go ahead and hire Doug Novak. There's some good coaches that I think are going to be in line, and I have a lot of those listed on our hot board. But I think Doug Novak is the guy. If you're not able to get Smesko, I just think you need to just take a chance. The fan base is rallying around Novak at this point. I'd like to see what he could do with a full roster. And if this doesn't work out, I don't think it's going to be the end of the world for Mississippi State women's basketball. I think you can go back to square one, because there is no way that I expect this program to get any worse than it has been the last 6 months as far as off the field stuff and having 7 players available, losing your coach before the season. It's hard to imagine it getting any worse than that. If Doug Novak doesn't work in 2 or 3 years, fine. Try to go get somebody else. But if you're not able to go land a guy like Carl Smesko or somebody that you feel like, and even he is not a can't miss guy, but I feel like there's high upside there. If you're not able to get that guy, then I just think Doug Novak is the one. So I that's just my personal opinion. Mason, what do you think of the hump upgrades, and when do they add to the dude again? I think the dude's going to be on the back burner. There's no reason right now. I know there's a demand for more seats, but right now that needs to be on the back burner with other things that you should address on campus. And one of those things is the top priority right now is the hump. Like you said, I like the hump upgrades. I'm not exactly sure if the renderings are matching up with what John Cohen said the other day. I heard John Cohen talk about the hump upgrades, and maybe I misheard him, but it seems like he was saying that it would be kind of an open concept when you walk through the concourse, where you would be able to see the court when you're walking around the concourse, the renderings don't seem to reflect that exactly, at least not in most of the stadium. So I'd like to get some clarity on that. I'm going to ask about that next time I see John. But if that's the case, I think this got a chance to be a really, really nice arena. I think it's going to be a good venue for Mississippi State. And one thing that really struck me when Cohen was talking about that, a lot of people wondering, why don't they just build a new arena? And the reason is they're talking to these architects, they're talking to these people that design the stadiums, these engineers, these people that know structures and know all about that stuff. And they say that Mississippi State structure, the bones of the building and the bowl, the way that the seats are in that arena is as good as it gets. The fact that you can actually see the game really well from just about every single spot in that stadium, they would suggest you do that. If you're going to build a new arena, they would suggest that be how you have the seats anyway. So if that's the case, then there's no reason to knock that thing down and spend millions of dollars more on just building from the ground up. So that makes sense. And I think that you can make this a really good venue with the bones that you already have. But it definitely does need a renovation. It needs to get a different look. It needs to be modernized. I mean, this building was built in the 70s and hasn't really been updated since. They've added some murals in there and things like that, but and they've added the Mize Pavilion, but it's fallen behind the wayside a little bit in the SEC, and it's got to be updated. So that's the first line of duty there for Mississippi State, to fix the hump, and then they'll fix the softball facilities, I believe, and build a new indoor facility there. And I think they have something planned as well for the football field. So, they got the stadium, the west upper deck is something that they're going to work on. They also want to eventually do something with the south end zone. I think that's in the early stages as well. So lots of stuff to plan, and Mississippi State's trying to keep up with the Joneses here and improve everything they got. Improve. You don't want to just put all your money in one place. You want the entire athletic department to come up a little bit, and I think that's a good idea for John Cohen and company to steadily improve everything. They got a new indoor tennis facility that they can get out of the weather and go in there and play if they need to. Softball got a new stadium about 8 years ago, I think, and it's top of the line, but they need a new hitting facility. Baseball has what it has, as you know, and one of the main things that I think probably needs to improve is the football facilities as far as a indoor football complex. I think that would be something that Mississippi State looks into in the future. So we'll see what happens with all that. Jason says they need to move the student section. Yeah, that is a topic of conversation for a lot of people. And first and foremost, you got to get more students there. If you really want to put a demand on that, more students have to get in the building, and that I think would help. But I think you need more students to get to the building first and foremost, because those are people that sit in those seats are paying a lot of money. So you have to have something to justify moving those people out of those seats and moving students over there. I completely agree. The hump is a better place when the students are on the side court and they're making noise and they're right on top of the action. But right now, there's nobody coming to games. And so it's hard to just go ahead, just wave a magic wand and say, all right, students are courtside, and expect that thing to be packed. So we'll see how all that plays out. I mean, I do think that they're talking about this behind the scenes, and they're trying to find a resolution for this. But really, I mean, attendance is just an issue as a whole for Mississippi State. They're not getting people in the stands, especially for these men's games, and the women's games haven't been great either. But that's really the case just about everywhere in women's basketball. For the men, it's a major problem for Mississippi State to get fans there. Oh, and you don't keep up with softball, but it looks like they aren't any good this year. They've struggled out of the gate, and they've played a few really good teams, but they've also lost to some teams that aren't very good. I mean, they lost to Loyola Marymount. They lost to Southern Illinois. They lost to Central Arkansas, Georgia Tech. I mean, that you can justify losing to Oklahoma and UCLA, even though they got shut out 9-0 and 8-0 in just 5 innings. But some of these other games are not pretty, and they are going to have to go on a run here because the SEC is not going to be very kind. That's a very tough schedule you have to navigate. So it's not. It hasn't been a good start for State, but they didn't start off extremely well last year. We'll see if they can pick it up. Oh well, if you guys got any more questions, throw them in the chat. We can go a few more minutes if you guys want to. Like I said, big weekend on the way. Mississippi State has baseball series coming up. They got softball on campus, I believe. Yeah, they got a softball. The Alex Wilcox Memorial's beginning. They'll host Longwood and Belmont in South Alabama. So they'll play 5 games this weekend. So you can go over there and see them if you'd like to. Baseball is playing at 3 o'clock tomorrow, 2 o'clock on Saturday, and 1 o'clock on Sunday. Men's basketball is hosting Vanderbilt in the second to last home game of the year. They host them on Saturday at noon. And then women's basketball is hosting Arkansas for senior day at the Hump, and that is Sunday at 5. So that'll be should be after the baseball game. Alan, I talked about that earlier. I'm sure you weren't in here yet, but yeah, I like Preston Johnson as a starter. I think he can easily get in there and pitch a lot of innings for Mississippi State. Was going to go look at his stats. He pitched 4 innings the other day. I was going to go look and see what he did last year because I remember against Vanderbilt, he pitched extremely well to kind of save Mississippi State's bullpen through 5 innings in that game. That was his season high, 5 innings, 2 hits, struck out 7. Surprisingly, he didn't throw over 2 2/3 innings all year. So he didn't have a whole lot of long relief for Mississippi State. Never threw more than 43 pitches until that Vanderbilt game. But he was so good in that Vanderbilt game. I think we got a kind of a sense of how long he can stretch out because it wasn't until really, really late when you saw him hang one up there and he gave up that home run that he waved by to. But I always thought that he could stretch out a little bit longer if he needed him to. I think he can train himself to really stretch it out and throw possibly 100 pitches down the stretch this year. So I really believe that he is going to be a good starter for Mississippi State. And if you can get him to lock that up, and then you have guys like, Jackson Fristow that can pitch on the midweek, then you really have a really good starting rotation. Jared, don't come in here starting that stuff. Jared Fleming. If you could pick a SEC series for Mississippi State to sweep, who would it be and why? Probably Ole Miss. That'd probably mine. Either Ole Miss or LSU would be really good for State, or sweeping Arkansas at their place. And that's such a weird series too. Every year since like 2015, I think, whoever's won the series has swept it. It's really weird. Alan, does football pick up any transfers before summer? Yeah, I think there will be another wave coming in after spring practices. You go through spring practice and you kind of figure out, okay, I'm not going to compete for a starting job, so it's time to go. And they've also had a few guys that have received offers here lately. I think an offensive lineman they're on from Arkansas State, a defensive back, I believe, from Middle Tennessee. So there's still some guys that they're after now. And then when the spring opens up some more spots, I think some more names are going to start coming out. And I think State will probably lose a few guys as well. It's just only natural at this point. And chances a quarterback leaves after spring practice. I think that's a possibility, but I'm not expecting it. I think that I still think that Will Rogers is going to win that job again. I'm going to have to see a lot from Sawyer Robertson in the spring to change my mind on that. And he's going to have a really good spring, I think, to get in the conversation. Because Will's coming into his third year as a starter. It's just going to be tough to get him out of there. And so Sawyer is a guy that I don't see waiting around if he's not able to take that job. Because, I mean, Will Rogers is just a sophomore about to be a junior, and he has a COVID year as well if he wants to use it after that. And Sawyer Robertson is a redshirt freshman. So it's going to be a couple of years before he can get his shot, maybe even 3 years. So guys today in 2022, they just don't want to stick it out like that. So Sawyer Robertson or Daniel Greek, either one of those guys, if they're not able to win the job over Will Rogers, it's hard to imagine either one of those guys wanting to stick it out for 5 years. So it's just only natural. But I think both of those guys, just my opinion, will stay through the spring, stay through the year just to see what happens. Because you're one play away from getting in the ball game. So you just never know. Alan, I know you think Will's going to win it, but you kind of wish Sawyer would win it. I mean, he's more talented for sure, but Will has commanded this offense about as well as you can. I mean, there's definitely some things that Will doesn't have that Sawyer does, like arm strength, things like that. But you can't just turn your head at the fact that he completed the highest percentage of passes in MSU history. I know a lot of those were short yardage passes, but he completed them, and he completed them as well as just about anybody in the country. So he deserves his credit. And if Sawyer is good enough, he should be able to win that job. But I think it's going to be tough. I think Will Rogers is better than a lot of people want to give him credit for. There's some things that he could obviously do better, but I think that there's a lot of things he gets blamed for. That's not always his fault. Mason, what does it mean for State with Coach Daugherty working with Team USA? I think that's big. Get your name out there and get to coach some more players and just become more of a face in volleyball. Mississippi State hasn't had that ever. This program has been traditionally a losing program. They've never gone to the NCAA tournament until this year. And it's just been, tough to get any kind of traction out there in volleyball. So I think she's done an incredible job at Mississippi State so far. And I think the best is yet to come. They gave her a pay raise. So that's pretty big for her to get that Team USA deal. Owen, what are your thoughts on Vic saying there isn't enough fan support at Texas? Not surprised at all. And I knew that was going to be a thing that really chapped his rear, because Vic worked incredibly hard to build a fan base at Mississippi State for women's basketball, and he had an incredibly loyal following, and he's just not getting into Texas. They don't care about women's basketball like Mississippi State fans came to care about it. And that was such an organic deal too, how that all happened. I think he's had a hard time connecting with that fan base like he did this one, which is kind of surprising to me because he's a native Texan. He's one of them. And I really thought that they would pick up more than they are right now, but I did not think that they would latch on like Mississippi State fans did. I knew that was going to be tough for him, but still a bigger brand than Mississippi State, and we'll see if he's able to have some of the same success that he did at Mississippi State so far. Not as much in the first 2 years, but this is just year 2. He went to the Elite Eight, I think, last year, and then there's no more Kim Mulkey. He should be able to compete for championships there in the Big 12. But right now, and I'm sure that is something that's really bothered him after being at Mississippi State for so long and having those huge crowds. He's just not getting it there. I think they're averaging over 2,000 fans. So not a huge surprise. Oh, let's see if anybody else had anything. All right, guys. Well, I guess we will slide on out of here. I appreciate you guys stopping in and talking with me for a little bit. I've enjoyed it. We'll get back on here next week, hopefully, if I can get all this house stuff moved and out of the way. We have, of course, basketball and baseball season overlapping. It's really difficult to find time to do stuff like this because you have a baseball or basketball game almost every night. But I appreciate it, guys. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you aren't already. Good to see you, Alan. Thanks for checking in, man. If you aren't already subscribed to this, it will keep you up to date on any videos or anything like that coming up. And go check us out, obviously, at 247 Sports. We've, like I said, I already got a hot board up for women's basketball. We will likely have a men's basketball hot board coming at the end of the season, I would imagine. So you want to stay tuned for that. We have 2 coaching searches about to go on. And one of the only places you're going to find any news on that is going to be over there at 247. So come check us out and join our site. We'd love to have you. We'd love to have you join the conversation on the message boards as well. So come over there, say hey, and we'll talk back with you. But appreciate you guys. Hope you guys have a great weekend. We'll see you at Duty Noble this weekend, and holler at you later.